Welcome to another episode of the Lords of Consciousness videocast. I'm your host, Clint-culberson, and we have taken a break over the summer, and this is our first one back this fall, and we plan to really hit the ground running. We have so much going on in the world, and I think that we just cannot have enough alternative media out there covering things that are going on, the truths that are being revealed, because truly we are living in what an amazing time, and as crazy and fearful as it can be at times, we want to be able to bring people on and expose light on people who are bringing light to the situation, so that we all don't freak out and think that we're all going down with the ship, because I don't believe that's what's taking place. And I'm really excited to have on a guest today who I found a couple years ago on the Richie-Allen show, and he's been a common guest there. And as I've gone down this path of discovering what's been going on from like a geopolitical standpoint and kind of really the history of the world, I've always been a fan of history, and then to come later into life and realizing how much of history has been tainted. And really trying to understand even my own life, my own path, and corporatism, and the economy, and the wars that we fought, and so on and so forth, and really trying to connect the dots. And my guest tonight is Dean Henderson, who is an author, and he's been someone that I've found that has such an ability to connect the dots that so few people can and have. Dean's written several books, and I'll read a couple of the titles here. The Grateful Unrich, Revolution in 50 Countries, Sticking It to the Matrix, The Federal Reserve Cartel, Big Oil and Their Bankers in the Persian Gulf, and his most recent book that he's co-authored with his wife Jill, Illuminati Agenda 21, The Luciferian Plan to Destroy Creation. Dean, my friend, welcome to the show, my friend. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, Clint.
Dean's joining us from South Central Missouri, out there in the northern Ozarks, a beautiful part of the world. And Dean was telling me in many ways, it's a part of the world that has not taken on all the new that we see in most of the big cities of the world. And there's in some ways like a preservation of, call them older ways. And there's a power to that, man. Maybe it's giving you the ability to have a perspective to see the world from a different vantage point in order for you to connect all these dots that you've been connecting throughout your career.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm, and really grateful for that. And I didn't when I was a kid, we didn't even go. We went to town once a week. We got like a nickel, and then we got a dime. Later, it was like a dime allowance, and then we'd go to town and we'd buy a Chico stick at the pharmacy, or what, or one of those candy canes, whatever. But it was like we went on Saturday, and we didn't even that's how I grew up. So I grew up, not being around people very much, really, just my family. And I'm really grateful for that, because I think that's it's almost like people right now, they're taking in as much information as they can. Now, this is good information, what we're doing tonight, but I don't mean this kind of information. I just mean like in general, people are loading their brains with information with this computer age, the internet age. Television was the precursor to that even. And it's just people are just filling themselves with information and with social interaction via computers, which isn't real social interaction, but it's almost like just a wrong path where we need to be going, because if we're going to figure this out and connect these dots, we got to empty our brains out, and we just got to pay attention. We don't want to overthink anything, and that's what a lot of people I feel like are doing. They're overthinking everything, and they're being encouraged to do that by the sort of Google, Wikipedia culture that we live in, where Google is kind of God,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever they say, that's what it is, and it's like no, not really, and so I guess, and that's why I just chose to keep living like I live in Missouri here. I lived in Montana for 10 years, in the hinterlands of western Montana and the Rockies, and then that got kind of gentrified and movie started out, and land got really high, so we made a run for the Ozarks, and been about 20 years. But yeah, definitely my life still consists of about once a week to town, and a lot of outside time. Most of my time isn't spent writing, blogging, and interviewing. It's actually spent, cutting wood and gardening and, just stuff like that. And So I really try to balance that. And yeah, I mean, but I think that does give you a little bit of grounding. It's that grounding right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even like a physiological grounding. People talk about these electromagnetic stuff they're throwing at us, is you need to walk around bare feet and all that. Well, it's true. It's just, you should always walk around bare feet. You should always be grounded. Just, that's going to be the biggest challenge in this techno era that we're in, is for people to stay grounded and not just fill their head with a bunch of useless garbage and think that it matters. Because information is just information. The only way information becomes valuable is if a moral good is done from that information, and it doesn't do you any good to just accumulate a library of information in your brain if it's just going to sit there or make you miserable. So, it has to be put into action.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. So actually, I mean, I'm always trying to empty out my brain, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. We're taught just the opposite, but
Yeah.
we empty out our brains, we can pay attention. And if you just pay attention, look around you, you can see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right there in front of you, all the cell towers going up, all the Roundup being sprayed on your food, and it's a depopulation agenda for real. And all this Trump, Clinton, shenanigans, it's just a puppet show. It's just a sideshow to keep you distracted.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like social media now, it's to engage people in this two-side mentality where the real left, like me, is just ignored. They don't want anybody knowing we even exist. And then your three choices are sort of, yeah, you could be a Trumpy or a Clinton-y, which they call that the left, which is such a huge lie, because the Clintons are sort of like extreme right-wing, but they're not quite Nazis like Trump, but they're really all the same. It's the same people. And then you have the alt-right, like Alex Jones, and that's kind of your three options. But even Alex Jones getting tossed off of Facebook, it wasn't Jones, it was a red herring again, because mostly what they went after was Latin American left media,
Mm-hmm.
and Iranian left was thrown off of Twitter and thrown off of Facebook. So they don't even talk about us, because they don't want people to know that there's this option of a real left, that not only a real left, but a left that's tuned into conspiracy facts. That's the most dangerous thing to these people ever, and it always will be. And that's why my site's been deleted by the NSA once, and that's why they've tried to kill me twice, and that's why I get a lot of problems. But I take it as a badge of honor, and I will speak the truth till I die, because it's not about me, it's about bigger things.
Yeah.
And that's what we gotta fix.
You spoke about this idea of just consuming endless information, but there is some of this information that eventually comes back onto your front doorstep, in a sense. You spoke about the Roundup being sprayed on our food. I mean, that literally is some of that's in your refrigerator right at this very moment. So some of this information, there's definitely information that's kind of cotton candy for your head, in a sense. But there is information that can truly impact your individual everyday life. And some of what, a lot of the information that you've been speaking about, which is kind of, the richest men in the world, and who's behind the biggest money that there is, and something that seems very far away from, some guy in central Missouri, and how does that really affect you, or wherever the heck you are that's listening to this conversation right now. But eventually it does, and is currently affecting our lives right now. And it's all the more important why we need to take actions in our physical lives, so that, one, we're not buying into their systems, that we're not buying into their trickery, in a sense, the things that have been negative for humanity. It's kind of like, I know I have a lot of friends who don't like to follow politics, and on many levels, I don't even like following politics. I mean, I didn't even set out to do this website, this YouTube channel, in order to get into politics. It's just kind of that the world around us it's happening, and it's important to discuss it. And I think one of the things you talk about so much is this idea of the head of the snake. And, so often, so many of us are discussing the issues of this world, and they're honestly they're only one, you think you got the head of the snake, but really you only got the middle of the body, or the tail, or the whatever part, and we're all grabbing one part of it, and we all think it's the head, like Monsanto, that's the king of it all. Once we get rid of Monsanto, we'll be free, like, and you name it, whatever issue that's out there. And it's not to say that there isn't value in people fighting against these parts of the snake, as you call it. But it is pretty vital that we talk about the head of the snake. And that's the part that you never see in mainstream media. You'd never see politicians talk about it. Maybe even like Bernie Sanders talking about the bankers. I mean, at least he's getting close. At least he's reaching, he's getting that much closer to it. But maybe I want you to discuss why it's so important that we really analytically, not just conspiratorial or just speculating, but like have real facts that prove who is at the head of the snake. And can you tell me, and talk to somebody too who might only see the situation we have in the world as a consequence of the nature of man, that there's nobody running the show, you're just a conspiracy theorist, this is all just, the man is evil and this is what you get, and can you kind of discuss why it's important to find the head of the snake and talk to that person who just doesn't, who totally doubts it?
Well, yeah. To kind of address your second question first, that's their main thing. See, they don't want us to hate ourselves, and they want us to hate humanity. This is how they're going to usher in the transhuman agenda and turn us all into robots and microchip us, is by getting us to blame humanity for all these problems, whether it's pollution or whether it's overpopulation or whether it's whatever it is. And that's all your 6 o'clock news at night, your local news is designed to do, is to make you cynical towards the average person. Oh, so-and-so shot his wife and went to jail, and so-and-so robbed a liquor store. There's never any reports about white collar crime, about wealthy people ripping us off, which happens every day. And then you get to the head of the snake part of it. And where does that come from? Well, it comes from the city of London. It comes from the 8 families that own our Federal Reserve Bank, 52% of the New York Fed. That's the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Kuhn Loebs, Goldman Sachs, Warburgs, Lehmans, Oppenheimers, Israel Moses Saif, and Lazard. And those families go way back. They married into the black nobility of Europe, which came out of the Holy Roman Empire, which came out of the Knights Templar, who came out of Egypt, looted all the Native American, Native African, Native Asian cultures of all their wealth, gold, silver, and so on. Stole all of it on their ships. They were the first people to have a bunch of ships and go around the world. Like, they were pirates, and they worked for the black nobility. They worked for the established families of Europe, who probably came from Egypt, who probably came from Babylon, and then who probably came from Samaria before that, and maybe aliens. We don't know. But what we do know is that from that point on, the Holy Roman Empire, which killed Jesus Christ, was kicked out of that area. Was kicked out of Italy by Pope Clement the 13th and King Philip of France. They went after these guys. They sent them packing. They ran off to Scotland. They made a stop in Basel, Switzerland on their way, and started the Bank of International Settlements in 1191. And Switzerland in general, founded Switzerland as sort of this place where they could hide their wealth and hide their Nazi buddies whenever they needed to, and the war criminals whenever they needed to. Went to Scotland. William III came to power in England in the 16th century. He invited him into London, and they took over the city of London. So the people that took over the city of London, in other words, the Roman Empire didn't die. It just moved to the city of London. The British Empire didn't die. It just uses America as its Hessianized mercenary force to do its bidding around the world. So we pay for it. Our boys die. And for example, in Iraq, Royal Dutch Shell got the first oil contract. British Petroleum got the second. Those companies are owned by the Oppenheimer, Rothschild families and by the Queen of Holland, the House of Orange. That's who owns those companies. No Americans are involved with those companies at a higher level. So 11th century, they signed this Magna Carta, the black nobility. They married in with these Sephardic Jews who, turned Jesus over to the Roman authorities, weren't very popular, so they left the Holy Land. They went to Spain. They battled the Moors. They ran the Moors out of Spain. The Moors had a very progressive, thing going. The Muslim black Moors. They were also, master sailors and had sailed all around the world by then and discovered a lot of stuff that they're not given credit for. Probably built the initial Sphinx and part of the pyramids in Egypt before these guys even came along and, of course, took credit for it. So they settled up in Spain. The Habsburgs still run Spain today. King Juan Carlos is a Habsburg. The Habsburgs have the spirit of destiny that killed Jesus Christ in their castle. They're also the kings of Belgium, Portugal, Hungary, many countries in Europe. The Habsburg family, very powerful family. So they allowed them to set up in Spain. From there, they started the slave trade. The Sephardic Jews went to the Caribbean, in Brazil, and they started the slave trade in that area. And then later on moved to England and intermarried with these black nobility families. And that's where you get these banking families that run the Federal Reserve. And that's who runs the city of London. It's the black nobility of Europe. They set it up under Magna Carta in like the 11th century. And it was always the place where they did business. And why? Because Britain is an island. It's an island. So it separates the bankers from the masses of Europe, the hordes of Europe. And at that time, I mean, it was no small feat, even just to cross the English Channel in a boat. You could do it, but it was well fortified. And so Britain set up this system of maritime law, British maritime law. If you go into a U.S. courtroom today, you'll see a gold fringe on our flag. That means you're entering in under British maritime law, which still rules this country. Why? Because the United States is a corporation. It's not a sovereign nation. It's a corporation. It's a district. The District of Columbia is a district for the city of London. They have many districts all around the world. Israel is just another creation of the city of London bankers, and that's designed just to stir up and to divide the Arabs and to steal their oil. That's all Israel is for. It's not a Jewish homeland at all. It has nothing to do with religion at all, even though they used the pretext as a smokescreen. Same with the House of Saud. It was Treaty of Jeddah 1922. Of course, the Balfour Declaration 1917 set up Israel. So they were set up about the same time. Before that, the Brits owned that whole area. They ran the Ottoman Turks out. They used the Saud people to do that. And they set up the House of Saud. They also set up later on Kuwait, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and these little fiefdoms, these little monarchies that surround the southwest side of the Persian Gulf, which is where 42% of the world's oil is. So they're all basically little front men for the city of London. And that's all Israel, and that's all Saudi or Bahrain or Kuwait or any of these countries really are. And the United States is run by the Crown. They do it through Crown agents. The latest one is Serco. They get a ton of contracts through USAID. They get a ton of contracts to run our air traffic control stuff, which made 9/11 a lot easier for them to do, which they did do. The Crown did 9/11. The main piece of evidence there that you need to know is Securasec, which had the contract on the towers, was run by Marvin Bush, George Bush's brother. That was a Crown agency corporation. It was Securacom at the time. It's changed its name to Securasec, but it's actually a Crown agency corporation, as is the Aga Khan Foundation, which creates all the fake Islamists all over the world. They've been cranking them out since 1947. And Aga Khan is from Pakistan, which is where it's based, but he lives in France, has racehorses, and actually lives really close to the Rothschilds' estate in France, and probably our friends is my guess. But they crank out these fake Islamists. I mean, no Islamist worth his salt would go around destroying Muslim holy sites. It's just, so it's obviously just a ruse, and it's designed to get us to hate Muslims and to create this clash of civilizations that Samuel Huntington talks about. So yeah, you talk about the head of the snake. I mean, these guys literally have that blood on their hands. They're the problem. They're why humanity, so-called humanity, is so screwed up. It's not humanity that's screwed up. It's these elite oligarchs that run the world that are really screwed up. And then they want to blame us for it, which is where this Agenda 21 comes in. We're supposed to feel guilty about, paper or plastic at the store. We're supposed to feel bad if we don't ride our bike and drive a car that day. We're supposed to. And meanwhile, Al Gore, good friend of Arm & Hammer, big oil magnate, right, with Occidental Petroleum, Maurice Strong, mining magnate in Canada. Those are the two guys behind the Rio Summit in '92, where Agenda 21 came out of. So it's all about making us feel bad. And the city of London has many tentacles. And one of them is the Royal Geographic Society. And the Royal Geographic Society, its job is to teach this false view of reality, of the history of natural law, natural reality. And their shtick is social Darwinism. Darwin was a Freemason. Darwin was funded by the kings, by the Habsburgs. He did write some interesting things. One of his central thesis was that cooperation within species was the most important thing for the survival of a species. In other words, that was his central thesis. Even though he was a Mason, he came to the conclusion that cooperation was the key. So, I mean, I grew up on a farm. I've been all over the Rockies hiking. I've been right up to here with the grizzly bear one time at my tent. I've been to Kruger National Park. I spend all my time outdoors, and all I see in nature is cooperation. I've never in my life seen two animals fighting. I just have, except I guess my dogs one time. But I mean, it just doesn't happen that often. It happens in the rut. It may happen in extreme, drought situation where the food's bad. But this whole idea that, that nature is just, this place where you have to dog eat dog and you have to be fighting all the time and staying on top, and no, we can't be equal. One of us has to be on top and one of us has to. This is all just inverted Luciferian National Geographic Society crap. And the Royal Geographic Society is maybe their biggest propaganda instrument, because as long as people believe that fairy tale about history, that fairy tale about nature, they're just going to be screwed up in all their dealings. Everything they do is going to be, they're going to be grabbing for stuff first instead of being kind, instead of being nice, instead of realizing that if you're nice to somebody, that's when they're nice back to you. But if you're just going to be like that, you're just going to create conflict wherever you go, and problems for yourself, which is the reality of it. I mean, that's the way reality actually does work, despite their lie. So the biggest thing for us is to get over this virtual reality that these bankers have foisted upon us about who we are, about the nature of who we are. See, we don't understand the nature of who we are because we don't understand nature. We don't understand how things work. And so that's one of their big things. Now, Tavistock Institute is another one of their big tools for propaganda. And that's the thing that pushes like different agendas. Like right now, it's the transgender agenda. And I have no problem with anybody that, is transgender. There's been people like that for millions of years or whatever. I have no problem. Gay people, one of my roommates used to be gay, at all. But when you start making this an agenda, I start going, what's going on here? So what's going on here is they're really wanting to confuse gender roles right now. They know this glyphosate that they're spraying everywhere is turning males into females and kind of females into males. And a lot of the stuff they're doing is designed to sort of mix up the gender roles right now so that nobody knows how to act. This whole Me Too movement, isn't that great? I mean, yeah, it's terrible when, that happens, but so much of this was like 30 years later. The gal, she's not quite the looker she used to be. And all of a sudden she's got this chip on her shoulder and she just wants to go after this guy for something that happened in high school. And it's just like, me too. Think about it. It's not us too, it's me too. So it's real narcissistic and it's real divide and conquer stuff. And this is the kind of stuff, and nobody knows how to act. And that's what they want. They want a situation where there's not going to be much breeding anymore. There's not going to be much marriage anymore. Why? Because they want to depopulate us. They want to kill us all. Like 90% of us, they want to kill us. The best way to do that is to get people not to procreate. And the best way to do that is to divide the genders like never before. And I see a lot of that right now. And I think computers are encouraging that, and TV's encouraging that. And it's encouraging sort of men to be meek and not be brave. And if you are, you're some chauvinist macho, whatever. And then it's encouraging women to be sort of like, kind of like a man. And it's like, no, that's just, it's crazy stuff what's going on right now. So this is all coming out of Tavistock Institute. They're the ones that created, I think, the hippie movement, because basically there may have been there's some really good intentioned people in that. I know a lot of them, but the whole thing about like unlimited drugs and free sex or whatever, it just creates this problem. And it creates this backlash that's where we got Richard Nixon. So what they did is they went in there, they took out the free speech movement, the Berkeley free speech movement, Mariel Salvi and those guys. They were a bunch of crew cut guys, law school guys, clean cut. Just they were real left. I mean, they were real left. They were going after economic issues. They were going after the inequality of wealth. They were going after racism. They're going after real stuff. And other groups started up, the Black Power movement with the Black Panthers, the AIM movement. A lot of good things are happening. So the CIA goes into Berkeley in the late 60s and they dump a bunch of bad acid and they sort of infiltrate the left with this kind of hippie New Age stuff. If you look at the first issue of New Age magazine, it comes from the Grand Orient Lodge, Freemason Lodge, Washington, D.C. It says so inside the front cover. Alex Constantine's book, Psychic Dictatorship, from way back. has a picture, a photocopy of that in that book. And the New Age movement is a total Luciferian Freemason project. So we're kind of at this time of Gog and Magog. It's like Gog is like the super masculine guy like Trump, just over the top idiot. And then Magog is kind of like this, it's like the New Age matriarchy, and they're pushing matriarchy. But I don't believe in patriarchy. I don't believe in matriarchy. I don't believe in oligarchy. I don't believe in anybody should arch over anybody else. This whole archy crap. This all comes from the Royal Geographic Society. It all comes from this skewed understanding of nature that basically justifies monopoly capitalism and justifies years and decades and centuries even of colonial rape and pillage of indigenous people. And those indigenous people are the ones that had it right. I mean, they had it right. They were egalitarian. They didn't have chiefs. That's just another white man's lie. They just had councils, men and women, elders, always elders, because they've been in the world longer. They know more than you, I mean, they just do. And so, those people had it right. And these people came in. And at that point, whenever that happened, that was when we really started, heading down the wrong track. So basically the city of London, it's a 1 square mile jurisdiction that's not part of London and it's not part of the UK. It's a separate entity. And this is why it's scary, because all the banks in the world have their headquarters there. They all trade 100% of the derivatives that are traded in the world are traded from the city of London. 100% of the offshore banking comes from there because the Bank of England is within that 1 square mile. And the Bank of England is where the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Bahamas, all these places get their authority. So there's no regulation. There's no, you can't follow who owns the stuff. Apparently there's $50 trillion in offshore accounts on the books at the Bank of England with no names on them. So, you don't even know who owns these accounts. Only the Bank of England knows. The city has councilmen and aldermen. To be an alderman, you have to be a Freemason. Everybody in the city's running around with these crazy, jester costumes on. They're laughing at us. They're mocking us. They really are. That's what that's about. They're mocking us. That's why Masons do circuses and parades. They're mocking us. They're laughing at us. How stupid we are for not seeing it. But the Freemasons, you think about Freemasons, you think about free ports like Bahamas, like Liberia, where they flag ships that don't have to pay taxes in either direction, thanks to a bunch of Mossad agents that set that up a long time ago in Liberia. Panama, same way. If you register a ship in Panama, you don't have to pay tax on that stuff. So free ports, so freehold land is the British system of land ownership. So like free trade agreements, it's all connected. This language is not, there's another dot connector, because freedom to be free, freedom. What does that mean? Free will. What is that? Do we really have free will? Or are we just so arrogant and stupid from the city of London that we think we have free will? Or is it just that we should just try to go along with creation and nature and God, instead of trying to rebel against nature with our free will? Right. See, so it's all this free stuff, again, thinking it's a good thing. And what is it? Where's it come from? So it's a lot of crazy stuff. And what they've done is they've just taken the language and they've inverted it. So now that like the buzzwords now are like sustainable development. That's the buzzword of Agenda 21. So if you hear those two words, run away. If you hear the word tolerance one more time, run away. Because what you want to do right now is be intolerant of any bullshit or any evil and just close up shop around your family and take care of your family and take care of your friends, because there's going to be a lot of people just coming to your door and just lying to you and telling you stories. And this is coming as an acceleration now with this internet, because the city of London has more influence over us now than ever before, because now they don't just have us on TV, they've got us on the internet. And they've got, even though you and I are doing this and we try to counteract it and we do our best, but believe me, we're not a pimple on a small ant's bottom of information compared to what these guys are able to crank out just by putting stupid stories on Yahoo, stupid stories on whatever, ads all over the place that you can't even see, to basically manipulate you, make you angry, make you fearful, because those are the impulses, those are the emotions that are required for you to go shopping. So, don't go shopping. What can we do about it? Don't go shopping. don't comply. Don't go along with any of their system as much as you can. It's hard. Yeah, you're going to have to do a few things, but people just need to stop complying. I mean, even voting at this point, I'm not going to vote anymore because when you vote, you're legitimizing the system. When they cheated on Bernie, that was the last time I voted. And I knocked on doors for Bernie in Iowa. I mean, I worked for Bernie for a while. But when that happened, to me, it's like, it's over.
Yep.
It's over. Don't even bother, because all you're doing when you vote is you're signing a contract and you're giving them consent. You're saying, that's okay. You can go ahead and rig that election. I went ahead and went along with it. Just don't even go along with it. Don't go along with it. And don't go along with anything that you don't have, and that's, you just have to live a life like that right now. And because these guys really, they've never had more influence over people right now. Now, on the other hand, there's never been more people waking up than right now. Okay. Because of people like you doing your show, and a lot of people are waking up. Okay. So that's happening. But at some point, when we reach a critical mass, I mean, we really are going to have to find a different way to do this, because these machines that we're talking on, this is compromised territory. This is the territory of the enemy. The internet was started as ARPANET. It was called ARPANET because it came from DARPA, which was Defense Advanced Research Projects Administration. That's where it came from. And at first, it was just a few CIA people, scientists, whatever, that had access to it. And then about 97, they rolled it out. It was all started at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories in 1972 when they were working on directed energy weapons. And in other words, the internet is it's a directed energy weapon in your house, but it's mainly mind control. I mean, there's also these frequencies, and everybody should get off Wi-Fi and go to a fiber optic cable to plug it in instead of using the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is really bad. The 5G that's coming is going to be even worse. I saw a Verizon ad on TV the other night that they're actually out in the open now, saying Verizon's going to be the first one to roll out 5G. And this is going to be the even more intense, higher frequency waves, 60 to 90 gigahertz. You get in front of one of those, it'll zap you. And they're going to have them everywhere, every 250 feet. And that it's all the smart grid. They're going to plug the smart grid into everything. A smart refrigerator, smart garage door opener. Crown Castle is the company putting all the towers up for these companies. Crown Castle. I don't know. You ever play chess? It sounds kind of like the Crown to me. And then General Electric, which is a Crown agency corporation, is the one bringing all the smart meters in, making them all, making every one of them, making all the lighting in their homes, the blue lighting, the LED lighting, the fluorescent lighting. So my opinion on this whole thing, this technology attack, this is an attack on us with technology, using technology. And the attack is being carried out by the same people we fought a war against in 1776 for our independence, which we got for a while. Then we lost. We had the Bank of the United States, so then we lost it. Alexander Hamilton won the argument. The first Federal Reserve was called the Bank of the United States. He set it up. He was a Rothschild agent. Jefferson argued against it. He was a Democrat. That we don't want it. We want a public central bank, but he lost. So Hamilton won. So we lost our independence right away, 1791, when that bank was set up. Then we got it back because Andrew Jackson revoked the charter of the bank. He ran his second campaign, re-election campaign, on that very issue. And you should read some of what Andrew Jackson had to say about these people. He said, "I rout you out like a den of vipers," he called them. And I mean, his language he wasn't mincing words. People didn't mince words back then. Now people want to be politically correct and mince words. Not good. Don't mince words. Jackson got us our independence back. We had zero debt under Andrew Jackson. It's the only time in the before or after in the history of the United States when we had zero debt. And that's why, because the Federal Reserve crowd, the 8 families, did not own our central bank at that time. So then they sprang the Mexican War on him. It's the Southern Democrats. These were Democrats that wanted slavery all over Mexico and the Caribbean. So they convinced Zachary Taylor and then later the people to invade Mexico and go after Santa Anna. And they did it. And after that war happened, we were broke again. So that's why they did it. So they would break this country. Jackson was under pressure. We were in a depression. And he was forced to basically go to the bankers to get money. So they come in with the second Bank of the United States, which is the second version of the Federal Reserve. You can think of about 1860. Well, then they started the Civil War, again, about slavery, but more about the crown, because all the planters in the South were British, heritage. And they were all about basically developing this economy of cotton, and it was all about sending the cotton back. Well, cotton, that's where the slavery comes in. But basically, the Rothschilds helped the South to try to secede. So did the French, and they wanted to divide this country once and for all. And if it hadn't been for Tsar Nicholas and the Russians sending a Navy armada to the Atlantic coast, we might have lost that Civil War. But Lincoln, in response to the Second Bank of the United States causing trouble, issued greenbacks, which was a nationalized treasury issued currency, and introduced. I just found out an income tax for the first time. There was an income tax, but only on the very wealthy people, and everything else was tariffs and excise tax and import taxes, because they had to get funding to get away from these Rothschilds. I mean, when you get rid of these guys, you got to find a source of funding. So his idea was to create greenbacks. Well, he ran his second re-election campaign again on revoking the charter of the Second Bank of the United States and issuing the greenbacks. And before he was ever elected, he was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, member of the Golden Dawn Society, in touch with the powers of Europe. Later took refuge in England, as did many Confederate generals, and the Confederate Secretary of State, Judea Benjamin. He fled to England. They took him in. I mean, so the England was helping the South, helping the slavers to try to divide this country. So then we became slaves again because the greenback was nixed, Lincoln was gone, and the Second Bank of the United States rolled on. So 1913, Woodrow Wilson comes along. He gets rid of all the tariffs, which up until that time funded everything for us. You put tariffs on imports from the East India Company, from Standard Oil, from General Electric, from the big, corporations that are owned by these big families. They pay for everything. There was no income tax other than that, just that little one on the rich during the Civil War. So 1913, Wilson waxes the tariffs, starts the Federal Reserve at the behest of the Warburg family and the Rockefellers through Nelson Aldrich and the Rothschilds, and launches the Federal Reserve in 1913. A couple of years later, the income tax is introduced so that middle-class people now have to pay the taxes that these guys used to pay. And then the same year, 1913, as the Fed was formed, all these foundations started up, the Rockefeller Foundation and all these foundations, Ford Foundation. And then they were going to launder their money that they were able to save by not having to pay the tariffs anymore that Wilson had revoked through social engineering projects, which is what foundations are. Foundations are, that's all they're there to socially engineer us. They're there to direct take a society in a certain direction with their projects that they fund. And of course, they'll never fund this conversation we're having, but they'll fund, the Fuzzy Grizzly Bear project or something like this, just to sort of like placate people, throw them a bone, and shut them up, anything like that. They're not going to fund this conversation, but they did that. And then 1917, the Russian Revolution, 1917, the Balfour Declaration, many things began to happen once the Federal Reserve was in place. And, it just up until the 80s, even 1980s, corporations in the United States could not trade overseas in US dollars. Actually, it was late 70s. And what Nixon did is he took us off the gold standard in 73. He sent Paul Volcker, the Fed chairman, to Kuwait and Nigeria because they have the best oil. Bonny Light Nigerian crude is the best oil. It's what they run high, F-16 fighters on and stuff. It's real light fuel, really good fuel. So he said, look, I'll give you guys the benchmark crude. In other words, we'll give you $2-3 above market rate for your light crude if you agree to only trade that in dollars. And they did. Kuwait agreed, Nigeria agreed. That was the beginning of the petrodollar. So we were out the gold standard when we were on the petrodollar in 73. Well, once that happened, the eurodollar market opened. And this is where the City of London comes back, because all the euro dollars are traded out of the City of London. All the euro dollar is a dollar, a US dollar, traded outside the United States, no matter where it is. So what happened was we literally deindustrialized this country because every corporation that had headquarters here was now able to take its money overseas. And they didn't used to be able to do that. There was a law until the 70s that you could not have US dollar accounts overseas unless you were using those to import or export goods. That was the only way you could do that. But what the euro dollar did is it just opened up the floodgates to all this offshore banking. And next thing you know, we got the City of London getting even more powerful. And this is when the trade agreements start to come in. See, the free trade agreements, because it's all in place now. All this dirty money can just go through the City of London, go through Cayman Islands. Nobody can trace it. whether it's drug money, whether it's a petrodollar from Saudi Arabia, whether it's human trafficking money out of Hungary. Nobody's going to, nobody knows because it's opaque. It's opaque. There's no way to see it. So that all started. So then Tony Blair came in. He destroyed the Labour Party in Britain. We call it the New Labour Party. Bill Clinton came in. He destroyed our Democratic Party, his Democrat Leadership Council, which moved it to the right, definitely. And they pushed the trade agreements. And Tony Blair said, "Oh, City of London, we're going to deregulate you even more now. You can have even more stuff, hidden from us than before." And they did. In 1992, the City of London was given even more sort of autonomy. So in the City of London, what happens is every bank votes in elections. Every person votes, every bank votes. There's not many people that live there. They just work there. So the bigger the bank, the more votes you get. So the HSBC, the world's dirtiest bank, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank Corporation, gets the most votes, literally. And the aldermen have to be Freemasons. And basically, the Lord Mayor of London, when the Queen of England comes into the City of London, she has to bow to the Lord Mayor of London, and then she has to trail him all the way around when she's walking through the city, even the Queen of England. Because the Queen of England, that's not the crown. That's just the House of Windsor. When I say the crown, that means the black nobility. That means the totality of all the crowns of Europe. And that's who owns the City of London. That's synonymous. The crown and the City of London are synonymous terms. But you have to understand that the crown doesn't just mean the Windsors. It means all the crowns of Europe calling the shots and interbred with these Sephardic Jewish Rothschild bankers. So the City of London, every bank has a Freemason lodge in the City of London. Like the Lord Mayor, his residence has its own Freemason lodge. And Lloyd's Bank has its own Freemason lodge. And see, the Freemasonry, and it's really crazy stuff. And for you and me, it was just like laughable, but it's like it has to be understood because they take it seriously. And if you read Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, which is the Bible of Freemasonry, Albert Pike, the illustrious Albert Pike, who not only founded the Ku Klux Klan, but prosecuted also the Indian Wars, Charleston, South Carolina, brought Freemasonry to America, wrote Morals and Dogma. And he talks in that book all about bathing in the light of Lucifer and stuff like this. So see, they really think Lucifer is smarter than God, who they call Adonai. And to them, God is less. And to them, the intellect is Lucifer. Lucifer is the intellect. Lucifer is the light. And so when they talk about, for example, the Enlightenment in Europe, the Enlightenment wasn't so hot because what the Enlightenment was a takeover of everything by this kind of Darwinistic, pseudo-scientific bunch of Luciferians. That's what the Enlightenment was. Before that, it was the Dark Ages, which mean people just kind of had faith in God, and that was just terrible. We couldn't have that. So we had to have the Enlightenment. And out of this is where Galileo and a lot of their other stooges came from. So, a lot of this, for so many decades, we have just been lied to about who the good guys are because they control the press. And it's not just about certain situations, but it's so many just general lies about that people are so lost. I mean, that's why people are just so lost. But we have to explain it to them. So the Masonic thing is that the intellect is more powerful than any creator or any life force or any God or anything. And that man can do things beyond God, basically. And so that is basically the definition of a fallen angel, right? I mean, that's when you have that arrogance that you think, and this is where we get glyphosate, and this is where we get nuclear, fission, where we create an atomic bomb because all of a sudden we're smarter than God. And it's also about fragmenting reality. It's into little pieces with with the intellect. I mean, again, you're atomizing things, you're objectifying things, you're putting everything under a microscope, and you're treating everything in a very piecemeal manner. Which in the beginning of the show, when I was talking about people filling their heads with the information, and that's what happens when you do that. Then you just get little piecemeal information. But what good is it? It's no good unless you understand the totality, the whole of it. That connect the dots that make it some valuable information finally. So they're spending their whole time fragmenting reality. That's why they do nuclear fission, not nuclear fusion, which would actually, cold fusion is totally safe, and it's fusing atoms. It's bringing nature together, and it's free energy, and it's no nuclear waste at all. But no, they do it the other way. They split it apart. They create dirty stuff you can't get rid of because they're arrogant. But basically, in their arrogance, they're stupid. At the heart of all of this is what has to be said: is the people that run the world are very stupid people. I mean, they're very stupid because they think they're very smart, but look what they're doing. And if they think they're going to depopulate us, and if they think they're going to have this all to themselves, this toxic wasteland that they've created, I mean, it's just insanity. So it's really more like they just have this kind of, it's like they're like missionaries. You know, what's funny is they say that, you know, they don't believe in this omnipotent God, yet they have this kind of missionary zeal towards science. I mean, you've never seen more religious people in the world than some of these crazy scientists. I mean, look at Silicon Valley right now. Look at these guys running Google. This Eric Schmidt guy, or look at Elon Musk. I mean, look at these guys. They're kind of nuts, you know, right now, and they're just so willing to just push the envelope of technology and science, and they don't really care about the ramifications. So they kind of have this kind of death wish, or this kind of dark kind of and yeah, then there's the question of, well, are there these archons, or are there these Anunnaki who have, you know, once you go there, once you go to the dark side, once you're willing to do whatever with your little intellect, and I do say little intellect because it's so meaningless, really, like, again, unless you have some moral vision of how to use it. That's wisdom, by the way, and much more powerful than intellect. So they just have this death wish. And I think once you go to that purely intellectual thing where you're just trying to solve a puzzle, then you can really fall under the dark force. You can really fall on, if there is this other AI out there other than AI. Well, to me, AI and aliens and the devil, they're sort of the same thing, because anything that's not from here, I'm pretty suspicious about it. I go by natural law. You know, that's what the Native Americans taught me. Most of what I know, I learned from Indians. And I grew up South Dakota, by Lakota, in Lakota country, you know. My dad took me hunting with them for grouse and antelope when I was 10 years old out West River. And he got along really good with the Indians. Most people in my town were racist against them. They hated them. They treated them badly. My dad did not. And he took flack for that even. But he taught me a lot. But they taught me a lot. And everything I learned about reality. So they just kind of laughing right now. The Indians are just laughing. I mean, the Indians have a great sense of humor. You know, it's not what people think with Indians. You know, mostly they're just really funny people. But they don't understand what we're doing. You know, we're like little kids playing with matches. And that's what it is. It's like little kids playing with matches. And these are the leaders. These are the leaders of the world. These are the people that run the city of London. So I guess what I like to say at the end of that rant is just that, like, these people are really stupid. And that's what you got to remember is, you know, we can take them down. It's so easy. All we got to do is know about it. It's just the awareness about this city of London, about these Rothschilds who are worth $100 trillion a year, and these other families. Just very few of them. Our numbers are so much greater. I mean, thousands and millions times more of us. But it's just about awareness, and then it's about not complying with their system, and then it's about just changing it. But if we just were aware of it, I mean, if they just knew we knew, if they knew enough of us knew, that would make them real nervous. Why do you think they're getting nervous now? Why do you think they're trying to start World War III with Russia? Why do you think they're cracking down on Facebook and Twitter on all these people? Why do you think it's happening? Because they know that we're getting close. They know that we're onto them. In fact, I think the election of Trump and Clinton, put them together like that, it was a match made in hell. It was like they needed that election to kind of distract people, see, for a while, because that was when we were really close to them. It was 15, 14. I mean, I feel like that was when we were really getting some numbers. And okay, then here comes the puppet show to distract people. Don't get distracted by that puppet show, man. Don't pick a side. They're all bad. Just become aware. Just become aware of this bigger thing that's going on. And the bigger thing is the City of London, Rothschild bankers. And they own not just the Federal Reserve, but all the central banks in the world. They start all the wars in the world. They issue all the debt in the world. They get everybody in debt, whether it's your house, your car, your country. They're in debt to the same people. You know, it's ridiculous. They pollute the environment with their corporations. They don't allow us to have single payer health care because they own the pharmaceutical companies and the hospital chains. They don't allow us to have education funding. They don't, because the Rockefeller Foundation writes the curriculum for our public schools, which aren't even public anymore. It's just sickening. So every single social ill, every single environmental ill, every single problem in the world, in other words, can be traced back to this Federal Reserve cartel. Mm-hmm. And until we start going to the head of the snake, we're just all going to be flailing at stuff that, you know, it's just like junior minions. And why waste our time? But we have to unite around an issue. And this is, I don't know, maybe, and I'm not saying this because it's my idea or something. I'm just saying because I don't know what else it would be. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what else we would unite around. I just don't have any idea what it would be.
Yeah.
To me, it has to be these bankers, because they're the scourge of the earth, and it's not humanity. It's these guys. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that happens is, in a way, they buy our compliance, because in this monetary system where people just want to put food on the table, man, and ultimately we love our families, and we definitely want to take care of our own. And I've experienced it myself in the corporate world, where people aren't willing to, even though they know something's up and they know there's some bullshit going on, they don't want to lose their jobs. Ultimately, like, they prefer to put food on the table and continue to do that in this system than to stand up and fight against it. And so considering the control that this cabal, this group, this whatever the heck, basically what you've been describing so eloquently, about how they control pretty much every major institution, corporation, government, you name it, media, sports, I mean, everything that's even good, I mean, it's like you brought up National Geographic, and man, there's a lot of goodness, of course, that they bring, but there's like a little twist to it, and it's like everything. It's just like sports. It's not to say that sports are bad. It's just that you take sports and you twist it, and now it's used as a control mechanism. So my question to you then is, with them like this overriding control over everything, it almost seems so hopeless. Do you see a global financial collapse that anyone who's really does their homework and you really start seeing, and this time around, there's a lot of people that are seeing it coming. Do you see this as our big opportunity, actually? Do you see this as the way to wake up the masses? And of course, when it happens, there will be a whole agenda to greater control us. But do you also see this as a way for people to finally wake up, like get out of the fog and the haze that they're in, that their paychecks are how they control them, and that finally they'll be willing to speak up and don't give an F anymore, and do something about it? I mean, do you see this impending collapse as our greatest opportunity?
Yeah, that's going to have to happen. I mean, and we can make it happen. And if you don't shop much and you get out of debt, see, those are two things you need to do, everybody, because the reason people are quiet and they don't want to rock the boat at work because they have to put food on the table is because they're in debt. That's the only reason they even have to go to work. I mean, my Sticking It to the Matrix book, I talk about how I retired at age 27. And I didn't even really work before that. I think the longest job I worked was 5 months. So I never really worked. I never really went to work. See, never did. Never had any money. Never came from money. Took a trip around the world. Had $2,000. I burned through it all. I came back. I got a master's degree. I needed money again. I went to Japan. I made some money there. And ever since then, I just been funding it myself. And I never really worked. But at 27, I never worked ever again, ever, at any job ever. It's not that hard, man. I mean, people they consume too much. They're pigs. We're pigs. We've been taught to be pigs. We've been taught to consume, and not just food, but I mean, just stuff. Just people go out and they shop and they shop and they shop and they love to shop. That has to stop, because the only way the system's really going to come down is we bring it down, and it will collapse. It will crash to the ground the minute we all quit shopping, or the minute we all quit going to work. But yeah, you can't do that if you're in debt. So you have to build up some savings. And you have to have a plan. And maybe you need to move to the country, because the country's where it's at, because you need to get some land. You need to own some land. You need to own a little bit of security. That's where land is like a means of production, because guess what? You can grow food on that land. You can raise animals on that land. It allows you to become a producer. See, I'm a producer. I produce more than I consume. I'm pretty sure, just by my garden, just by the stuff I do here. I produce more than I consume, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's what America has to do again. If we're going to be a great nation again, that's what we have to do. It's not just about taking these guys out, but it's the main thing is to take them out. But it's also about, how are we going to become a great nation again? How are we going to become not a debtor nation? Well, it's going to be if we all start producing, instead of we all quit consuming so much and we all start producing something, just something. So we can make it happen. But yeah, I think it will expedite things. I saw in '08 when the bank thing happened, where, by the way, the biggest Wall Street banks doubled their asset size following that, because, these 8 family banks like JP Morgan, they were just given. Washington Mutual, Merrill Lynch was just given to Bank of America. Lehman Brothers was just given to Barclays. That's why you have Oppenheimer Lehman money tied up now. So that's what the end result of that was. And of course they sold the derivatives on the housing market going down, betting on it going down, and made money on that. And then they go to the courthouse steps and they buy those houses up for pennies on the dollar. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, that's who buys those houses up again. See, it's all about just pump and dump. And it's like real assets is what they're after. The fiat currency, the whole banking, money out of nothing magic that they do, because they're magicians, these little Masons. They think they're real magicians. And so they just do that, and then they issue debt, and they get you in debt, and then it's all fake. And then they come in, they just say, oh, time's up, I'm going to take your house. Time's up, I'm going to take your national cement company, Mexico. Time's up, Nicaragua, we're going to nationalize, you're going to privatize your water system and give it to Bechtel or whatever. Mm-hmm. And this is how it works. So again, now 300 years ago, we had 2% of people living in cities, and everybody else lived in the country. Mm-hmm. Now it's just the opposite, and it's worse than that. So what's happened? The long story short, they stole our land. That's what happened. They stole our land. You got to go get it back. Everybody got to get some land back. And, I know it's not, especially among the left, it's like they want to be, they think the Indians didn't own land, so they don't have to. Well, the Indians didn't have to own land. They didn't want to own land because they didn't have a bunch of white assholes around like these guys to deal with. Okay. They didn't have that to deal with. We have to deal with these guys. We have to deal with the courthouse and the cops. And if you get some private property and you play their game a little bit, but it has to happen right now. We need land reform. Okay. We need land reform. That's a political issue that there's probably no other political issue more important than land reform right now, other than maybe breaking up the cartels, or nationalizing the Fed directly. But along with that, we need land reform, which has happened in many countries. And it's a perfectly logical thing to do. And you just break up Ted Turner's ranches over there in Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho and Utah. He's got 1,000,000-acre spreads. And you just say, hey, Ted, here's $500 an acre. Mm-hmm. Government gives them money, borrows the money at 0%, maybe to the guy that's buying it, or just gives it to him, depending on the need or depending on the business plan. There's all kinds of ways to do it. But nobody's even talking about that. That's why there's no real left in this country. If there was a real left in this country, including Bernie Sanders, somebody in Congress would be talking about land reform, or somebody somewhere would be talking about land reform, because it's only like the biggest thing that's ever happened in world history from the side of the left. I mean, and it's happened everywhere. It's happened in Mexico. It happened all through Central America, South America, Thailand, India. Land reform. It's happened. Hasn't happened here. And I don't know, with this housing as expensive as it is for these kids, for these young people, how the hell else are we going to get out of this? So yeah, we need a crash. We need the real estate market to crash too. I did see more awareness in 2008, even though it was a bad outcome and it was all about concentrating wealth in the end. Mm-hmm. It always is. And it will be again. Yeah, you're right. But it's an opportunity. Yeah, because what it does is it takes 401k money and it flushes it down the toilet. So all these people who think they can sleep with Satan, and that's okay, and I call them minions, because it's like there's vampires and minions. The bankers are the vampires. I just wrote a column called Minions Feeding Vampires. And see, me and you were like vampire food, because so the minions will throw us over the side and blame us, and they're trying to liberate them and free them. Mm-hmm. And they'll suck up to their boss, the vampire, and they'll say, hey, I'm going to defend him. That's got to stop. That's just got to stop. This I'm not going to rock the boat stuff's got to stop, because it's cowardly. In the Bible, it says the first people going to be pushed into the gates of hell in the book of Revelations, it's not going to be the evil ones. It's not going to be the bankers. It's going to be the people who stood by and let the bankers do this. And to me, it's just as evil. It's just like saying, I don't see the Jews going in the ovens. It's the same kind of thing. If you just let this stuff go, and let's just let Dean and Clint deal with it, or whatever. We're tired of dealing with it. We're tired of not having help. We're tired of being tired and being strung out and doing this over and over and over. It's like somebody just step up. Everybody needs to step up. And this is what I don't know. I don't get it, because Americans, you you read stuff from our Civil War, heritage, or you read stuff from the 1800s, man. These are some tough people, man. These were some people who just had some, they had some courage. And what I see in America that's really lacking is just courage. Just people lost their courage. Everybody's playing it safe. And I think social media makes it worse, because it creates these little fake consensus, positions that you can stake out and be safe, and nobody will attack you. And that's what they're teaching us. That's what they're teaching us with these I call them anti-social media platforms, because they are antisocial in the end. They destroy families, they destroy friends, they destroy real relationships, and they put fake stuff. But it's all this kind of drone mentality, kind of like the Borg, like putting ideas that everybody can, we have consensus about or whatever. It's just like, really? I mean, that's just kind of, I don't know. It's like sissy stuff to me. It's just what happened to the guys that founded this country, the gals that founded this country, that just a tough, kind of like independent spirit, authenticity. Everybody's their own person. We don't have to think alike. We don't want to think alike. I don't want anybody to think like me. God forbid. There's one of me. That's enough.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want anybody to believe me. Just go find this stuff out for yourself and stuff. But I mean, there's just a real problem with that. So that lack of courage that you're talking about, whether it crashes or not, it has to change, because it might crash and it might not crash. And guess what? Unless we quit shopping, and unless we quit buying their stuff, and unless we get out of debt and quit working their stupid jobs, even take it to the limit, get in the country, get free. It's possible. I did it. I can tell you how. Read my book, Sting Into the Matrix. It's $10. If you can't afford it, I'll send you one free on, send me your email. Seriously, especially if you're a young person, because this is how to do it. And it's easy. It's not that hard. Okay. It just takes a little bit of effort, but it's like, I don't know. I just, if we don't do that, it won't crash. And if it does crash, it'll be because they made it crash, and they'll be in full control of it. People say, oh, should I buy gold? Well, I don't know. Did the Rothschilds buy gold? Because if the Rothschilds bought gold recently, then it's going to go up. It's no different than a piece of paper. Yep. It's no different than a Bitcoin. It doesn't matter if I loaf of bread. It just matters who has the bread. It matters who has the loaves of bread. See? And if, as long as they have the loaves of bread, and they have the gold, and they have the Bitcoins, and they have the dollars, we're fucked. Yeah. So we got to break that cartel up, and we got to have national Treasury Department issued currency. Yeah. That's, but
it seems like in real life, most people don't change their health until they have a health scare. Most people don't get out of toxic relationships until it gets so painful that they finally do something about it, right? There are, not to say that everyone does it this way. There are some people who see the warning signs in their lives and make the changes ahead of time. There are people who have been courageous enough to wake up in a world where you're in a very small minority. I mean, you've been at this a long time. I mean, think about how many people are more open to what you're talking about now than when you first started doing this. I mean, I think it's safe to say that there's definitely a growth, but the one advantage that we have, we talk about the control that they have and how they they own everything. And yes, their plan has been so successful, and they've taken good tools. They've taken tools of technology and used it against us, so on and so forth, right? It's kind of like the gun argument. Do guns kill people or do people kill people? Well, it's this idea of using this polarity, of the negative polarity of everything, and then using it against us. But the one thing we have is we outnumber them by a bajillion to one. I mean, it's nuts how. I mean, that's the one thing, is that picture of them sitting on the table and all the slaves underneath it. And if everyone would just stand up, the table would be tipped over. And it's a very powerful meme, a very powerful message behind that artwork, because that's really what it'll take. And I guess I know someone like you's watched this and you go, come on, wake up, damn it, people. Come on, stop being so scared. All we have to do is just do this together. But the numbers required to do this still haven't been met. And it seems, though, that it will take something. It's going to take the health scare for the collective. I'm talking about for the great masses of people to really even search out this information. I mean, as much as I'm loving this interview, and as much as I would love for a million people, literally a million people, to watch this and listen to what you're saying. It's probably not going to happen right now. I mean, who knows? Maybe in 10 years, maybe in the future, maybe post collapse, people will go, "What the hell's going on here?" And this interview will gain some ground. But I can tell you, pre collapse, we're lucky if we get a couple thousand people to really look at it, and that's okay. And maybe we do these interviews and we make these recordings, and I mean, all the people in the truth movement, even people who, even the guys with the biggest reach, the Richie-Allens and the David Ikes and all these people, even the amount of people they're reaching is still very small in the grand scheme of things. I mean, ultimately, most people are still the stuff with the biggest views on YouTube is some. I mean, I'm not trying to spin negativity on everything, but it's not getting to the real problems here, and solving it's not bringing everyone together on a bigger level. And I just think that it's going to be fascinating to watch, and it's going to be fascinating to see. And I do believe that we almost, in a sense, need the paradigm to shift in a big way. And maybe it's a real seemingly negative one. Maybe it's this thing in Syria. Maybe we are headed towards World War III. I like to think that we're not, but it's all lining up right now in a very scary way that we could be headed towards this. We have these two sides of things. And actually, I mean, with your permission to keep on going here, we kind of reached the hour mark, but I really wanted to get your opinion on this World War III possibility and how it's lining up in terms of this story with Syria. Russia has been there with Syria's permission. We have, we have Israel doing very precarious moves that are provoking war in terms of what they did recently, flying their jets behind Russian planes, and Syria shot down. This kind of stuff is nuts. And could be literally the precursor. I mean, wars have been caused by far smaller events than we were already seeing. How do you see this Syria situation? How China could be even getting involved in it, and where's the truth beyond all of this?
Well, the first thing you have to remember is war is business and business is good. That's what Edwin Wilson said when they hauled him off to Marion prison as a fall guy during the ETSCO scandal, which was kind of an Iran-Contra precursor thing. He was an arms dealer, pilot guy. And they said, why is all these brush fire wars happening, Edwin? And he says, war is business and business is good. So just remember that always, because we don't really know who's who. I'm hoping Putin and this alliance that he's part of is for real. I'm hoping he's not. I was kind of disappointed with his response to the Israelis. The Russian military was very stern, but Putin was really conciliatory, and he shouldn't have been at all, because no matter who shot that thing down, and it was the S-400s, the Russian S-400s, but the Israelis provoked it and caused it. They were causing trouble. So I thought he was too soft on him. So there's some people think that he's tied in with this Chabad movement. So I hope not, because I always say Putin is like, maybe he's the only hope we have. Yeah, because I mean, it's like, are we going to be able domestically to take these guys down? Unless everybody's willing to quit shopping, unless it crashes and people lose their 401ks and they get more solidarity with the lower class, these middle class kind of highbrow people that want to climb the freaking ladder and they think they're going to be millionaires someday, which is just a pipe dream. It ain't going to happen for nobody. Trust me. If you're not bloodline, you're not going to be rich. Okay, that's just the way it is. That's the way adults deal. You could be a sixth grader for your whole life if you want to believe in that fairy tale. Fine, do what you want to do. Otherwise, it's going to have to be Putin, China, Iran, this alliance. So how desperate are the bankers? I don't know. I mean, it depends how close this thing is to going tits up, I suppose. And it depends how close China is to trading all their oil in yuan, and how close the Iranians are to trading their oil in reals, and how close Putin is to only buying his oil in those currencies. I think that's what we're dealing with here. I think it's, the dollar is being sort of attacked here with this new alliance that's forming. And that's why they're poking Iran in the eye lately, that 25 people died at this military parade by again, terrorists. Obviously Mossad agents, probably Saudi trained, Saudi funded, whatever, sent in there, just brazenly just blowing up women and children, targeting women and children at this Iranian military parade, celebrating their independence. And Iran is going to be the problem for these people. I mean, I just don't think they really understand how powerful Iran has gotten as a regional player. That's why the Saudis are doing this thing in Yemen. It's a proxy war against Iran, this butchery that's being done in Yemen. And, that's why they created this whole Sunni Shia division, which really wasn't a division for many, many decades and centuries before this. But the CIA has played on this division because they know the Iranians are Shia mostly. And so they've now created this division of Sunni and Shia. But Iran's influence in Iraq is great. I mean, they backed Muqtada al-Sadr. They won the last election, the Communist Party, which is largely Shia and led by al-Sadr. So we lost Iraq already to the Iranians. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, Syria was number 6 on the PNAC hit list. Iran's number 7. But we can't even get number 6 taken care of. I mean, we're getting our butts kicked. Not we, but they. And so Idlib, that's it. And then that's done. And, and Israel is so desperate that, yeah, they probably were flying those sorties to prevent Hezbollah from getting some weapons that were left over from Syria, because Hezbollah has become a regional force. Hezbollah is now the biggest force in Lebanon. I mean, it runs the government now. People don't even realize that because they don't tell us that. They don't want to tell you the bad news, but the bad news is actually the good news, because Hezbollah, that's our friend. So Iran is our friend. I think Putin's our friend. And this is the thing, and Assad is our friend. Assad, the reason they hate Assad, he's a socialist, he's pan-Arabist. He brought together Sunni and Shia and Alawite Christians and everybody. And he just says, hey, let's get under the big bath tent and let's get along. And they hate that, because if it's not divide and conquer, I mean, how are we going to steal their oil, for Christ's sakes? Mm-hmm. Got to divide and conquer these people. And, Assad's a unifier. So this is a big problem for them. I think it's really about the currency trading and oil that's going on that's really freaking them out right now. And this is why Trump is sanctioning Iran again, trying to back out of the JCPOA. And this is why Israel's doing the provocations. But I don't know. Israel, again, just a proxy for the city of London. I think, what they're looking at is kind of a move away from Europe now. I think the Brexit was funded by Robert Mercer, the same guy that funded, Cambridge Analytica, owned it. Cambridge Analytica is British intelligence. There's a Lord Mountbatten on the board of directors, for Christ's sakes. That's the Queen's cousin, Mountbatten family, one of the most powerful of the black nobility families in all of Europe. They need an export license. SLC, the parent company of Cambridge Analytica, needs an export license to export anything. This is British intelligence that got Trump elected. It's not the Russians. But it was British intelligence that got him elected. And I think 2 reasons. One, they want to pull away from Europe. They want to do the Brexit. Why? Because the banks are in the city of London. And to get away from the EU, which is now increasingly more and more talking about bank regulation, increasingly anti-Israeli stance from countries like Norway, Sweden. They want to get away from all that. Mm-hmm. And again, they don't want any democracy. They don't even want to be part of the UK or London. Why would they want to be part of the EU? So it worked for a little while. The EU was an evil creation of these bankers, yes. But now I maintain that the city of London's decided they want to go it alone, just like Switzerland goes alone. See, so they're separate and they don't have, they're kind of beyond it, above it, whatever, all that stuff. And then they want to take the US along for the ride with Trump. And they know nobody else would do that. So Trump is trying to basically reinvent this old Anglo-American, Israeli-Saudi alliance, this kind of dark ages, we talk about real dark ages alliance that existed before, any of this, happened. And, that's what it's about. And so Mercer funds that, and Mercer funds Cambridge Analytical. And Trump's also like, he's in there because he's like a punching bag. He's like easy to hate. I wrote an article called "Why Trump's a Rothschild Tool," and all you need to know is '92 he got bailed out by Wilbur Ross, who was a bond specialist for Rothschild Inc. That's a fact. Look at Bloomberg. Look at 1992 article in the LA Times when it happened. So he went in, he bought the Taj Mahal, he bought all Atlantic City property. Went bankrupt. Wilbur Ross came in and said, "Here, we'll cut your debt in half and just give us all this property." So he gave it to them. And, Resorts International and all his Meyer Lansky and all these Rothschild surrogates build all these casinos in Atlantic City so they can run their drugs and pedophilia and all their nasty stuff that they do in Las Vegas off the East Coast now, which is what they do there. He probably got a young wife, white sex slave person Here's your wife. Here's your little wife from the Eastern European sex trade, Melania. You get to be president now, too, by the way. That's the deal. And what do they get out of it? They're like, well, you get in there, you're a punching bag. Everybody hates you. I mean, anybody with any sense just has a visceral reaction to that guy. So then we'll just use you in that manner. We'll get people so lathered up against you, they'll forget about the 5G. They'll forget about all the stuff we're rolling out on them, all this attack we have, World War III, all this stuff that's coming at them. And then you put the deep state on the outside, and they call themselves stand and resist. Oh, that's rich. Like sit and spin. So it's like the deep state is on the outside, and they're supposed to be this persecuted bunch of kind of matriarchs, I guess. And now they're getting this wide berth, and the media loves them, and so the media attacks Trump, and they sort of back this. So now the left, the so-called, the liberals, the so-called left, which isn't left at all, as I said, they love the CIA, they love the FBI again, they love the mainstream media again. Oh, they're their friends now, right? And they just all this stuff about COINTELPRO. Oh, I don't remember that. All this stuff about NAFTA being bad and free trade being bad. I don't remember that because Trump used for tariffs. And so it's a dumbing down of people. But the reason Trump's in there, I think, ultimately comes down to they want to reinvent this Anglo-American, British, just sort of hard foreign policy, go it alone, but with this one or two allies that are very key, and then screw everybody else. And that's where they seem to be going with this thing. But I think it's going to be a disaster. And I think we're going to have a lot of egg in our face. And we can only hope that, that this, like I say, that this economy would crash sooner than later, because that, we got to just take these people out of power. It's terrible what they're doing to our country. We're under attack and we don't even know it. And we think we're under attack from Muslims, or people, they think we're under attack from, I don't know what, but they don't understand the real enemy, and the real enemy is the city of London, and they're just using us like a rag. It's just, there's no dignity in it. It's just horrible. But people just got to turn on, man, and just become aware. That's the main thing, and just be nice to one another, and just carry out your affairs in a dignified and a manner of empathy for everyone else in the world, because you can't let these people tell you how to be. You have to just be, and you have to know that that's the way to be. And then, no matter what comes, I mean, win, lose or draw, you can sleep at night, man. You can go to bed at night. You can die, and you can feel like, hey, man, I did the right thing. But you also can't be silent. I mean, that's not an option. Silence is just as bad as being on the other side of this thing. It really is. That's what I really want to stress to people.
Yeah.
Because people got to quit being afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. If you believe in good, God, creator, whatever it is for you, if you believe in that force of some kind, consciousness, whatever, awareness, if you believe in that, there's no reason to be afraid. The only reason you'd be afraid is if you kind of doubted that. So that's what I think. People they don't quite have the faith. They don't quite have the faith, that I have, because, hey, man, I'm just a hologram, and this is all going to end when it ends, and big deal. But I know we're all here for a reason, and I know it can't be to make it a worse place. I know that's not why we're here. I know it's to make it a better place. So, yeah, let's do that.
Beautiful. I have like a million questions to ask you, but I do want to end with this. Based on what you just said just now, do you see the story of humanity like from a bird's eye view? If you were an alien just looking down on this whole history that you've spent so many years of your life researching, but just this history of this species, do you see it as just a necessary part of our maybe evolutionary ascension of some sort? Meaning, we've been enslaved in so many ways, physically, mentally, you name it. Do you find though that this kind of schoolyard bully who's in a way enslaved us, do you feel like though we needed this schoolyard bully for us to find our true power, for us, like this is the universe's resistance against us for us to evolve? It's like the weight on the bench that you're bench pressing. If there was no weight, you would never gain any muscle. I mean, is this what we're lifting up in a sense? We need these. We needed this resistance. Call it through whatever means that this nefarious force is that's plagued the planet. Do you see it as something that's super necessary?
Yeah, no, that's really well stated. I can't say it any better than that, Clint. That's exactly it. We've been here before. We've been here before. There was a great flood. The dinosaurs did get smashed by a meteor or something. God put an end to things because people didn't learn. And this is what's going to happen. They're not going to be allowed to roll out a 5G program that plugs everybody with a microchip and a Bitcoin account into their Internet of Things, monitors us 24/7 with the all CNI. That's not going to happen. You know why it's not going to happen? God's not going to allow that to happen, man. But yeah, they're there for a reason. They're there so we learn, so we get stronger, so we do the right thing. But we only attain salvation, whether it's on this earth or somewhere else, if we do the right thing by not being silent about it. But once it gets to that point where, if they just totally, oh, ha, ha, we thought we had you, it's like the Aborigines say, that's when the sticks and rocks go in the ground. And what they mean by that is that's when the world ends. That's when God pulls the plug. That's when a big solar flare is going to come flying out of that sun. And that, it's like the temperature in your body goes up to kill a virus, right? You get a fever. Well, the Earth's got a fever right now. Okay. And it's not going to be allowed to happen. So the sticks and rocks are going to go in the ground before it happens. And then, yeah, there'll be a few ancients. I think the Aborigines were those ancients this last time that were left for us to learn from. The very most ancient ones, I really do. But there's others, that they taught that are also very wise. And they'll be left, and they'll have to try this again. They'll have to try this again on this plane. But yeah, I think there's a lot to that, and I think if there, yeah, I mean, you have to. It's all just life has to be about. Doesn't have to be just about learning stuff and being a better person. And how can you become a better person if you're not confronted with, like, say, schoolyard bullying? I mean, when I was in second grade, man, I have no idea why, but my teacher, this big kid, he tripped her, and he picked on some other little kid in my class. And so one day I went out to the schoolyard. I literally just said, "Come on, put him up, buddy." And I mean, the kid's like a foot taller than I am and probably 100 pounds heavy or whatever. Knocked him on his butt. But I don't know. So where did I learn that? Probably my dad, because my dad was like that. So much is about upbringing. So much is about how your parents taught you when you were real little, how to deal with stuff. But, why'd your parents teach you that stuff? I mean, was it just empty information to fill your mind with, and discombobulated information? No, it wasn't. It was for a reason. It was because they loved you and they were trying to teach you a lesson about life. And yeah, it's the same with all this stuff we're talking about. It's lessons in life. And it's all about how we react to it. It's all about how we deal with it. That whether there's nirvana or whether there's dharma or whether there's, the way I look at it, it's just a guess. We don't know until we die. But I think, man, if you're good in this life, maybe you get to be a hawk or an eagle. And if you're bad, maybe you get to George Bush is a slum dweller in Calcutta, but I have no idea. I mean, that's just a guess. But I'm just, whatever it is, man, everything's a lesson and we have to learn from it. But we have to learn from it. Because, again, it doesn't do any good to massage over all this information and then in the end do nothing about it, But, even this conversation, of course, we're doing something about it. This is part of the doing something about it, is just making people aware. And it's just really, it's about standing up to authority. Okay. It's about because the authority on this earth, it's really satanic at this point. All authority is somehow compromised to a lie about nature, about the nature of authority, because authority has no authority really. It just says it has authority. It has no real power at all. We have the power. You can't just come and take my power. Sorry. So it's just about authority. So authority has nothing, and until we give it something. And I'm a war resistor. I don't pay income tax because I make under the federal amount required. Yep, as a couple, you can make up to like 20 grand. I do it intentionally. I don't make that intentionally 20 grand a year. I don't do it. And why? I don't want to pay the war machine. Everybody do that. Oh, how can you live on 20 grand? Dude, it's easy. I sock money in my savings account every month. And actually last year I made about 12 grand. It's easy, but you got to get it figured out. You got to get in a place where you can do that. You're not going to be able to live in San Francisco, okay? In the hip district at $3,000 a month for a little box. I mean, you got to get it figured out. And that's why I say be urbanized, get out of Dodge, get out of the cities, Go find a cheap place to live in this country and live your dream,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to have that economic base. And I feel like everybody, is so busy on the computer nowadays. They don't, we don't move as much as our parents used to. We're not as mobile as our parents, and they weren't as mobile as their grandparents. That's interesting, right? Because you think, oh, these stodgy old people, they just stayed in one place. No, they moved around. They went to opportunity. They went there was opportunity, and they went there. And even 3 generations ago, the California Gold Rush. Think about that. And even 4 generations ago, the Scotch Irish that came here from Kentucky, because they just kept pushing west. And the people that pushed west on the northern, the Germans and the Slavs that pushed west from Chicago, out of the meat packing industries, and went out and got farms in the Midwest. We gotta get that pioneer spirit back. We gotta get that entrepreneur spirit back. And this is what again, this fake left has destroyed. It's all about transgender identity politics and a bunch of garbage. And then it's railing again. Yeah, you're not supposed to make any money if you're a lefty. Where's that coming from? That's the new age crap. It's like you have every right to go out, buy some land, run a business, and make some money. I saw more capitalism in Nicaragua under the Sandinistas in '85 than I've seen anywhere. And they were supposed to be this Marxist evil dictatorship or whatever. It's not how it works. I mean, it's just an oversimplification of economic theory and reality.
Yeah.
But everybody should go out and be a pioneer. Have that kind of entrepreneurial. You'll look for a way to, like I say, produce something, sell something, make some money. This is what my book Stick to Mate's all about. And you got that whole bubble of that kind of lefty. See, that's a yoke they put on your neck, man. That's bondage they put on you when they said that. And that because you have to hate yourself. You're not allowed to have a good life, right? You're just supposed to be this. No, that's not the way it is. So bust out of all this crap that we've been taught, and we have to be entrepreneurs. We have to get our land back, and we have to reject the wage slavery and the shopping, if at all possible. Now, you might need to go work a job for a while just to get what I call a grub stake. It's called grub stake. Then you can come here and buy some land. It's cheap, or somewhere else that's cheap land. That's why I'm here. Okay, number 1, cheap land. Number 2, clean water. Number 3, clean air. But you're going to have to go get a grub stake. I went and got mine in the, I scraped asbestos at schools when I was for $27 an hour. You can go to Antarctica now. You can work at the Antarctic Resource Station. You can get like $50 an hour. There's ways to do it, but you got to think outside the box. Where can I go get some cash? And then you have to have, why do I want that cash? Well, because I want to go buy some land. So I never have to pay rent again, ever, not one day. Because then you can pay cash for that land, which is what we did here. So I don't have a house payment and I don't have rent. And that makes everything different. That makes it all different, man, because you're free. I mean, other than paying my property taxes every year, I grow my own food. I cut my own wood. There's no heating expense in the winter. We don't buy vegetables or fruit in the summer. We don't buy too many in the winter because we got a bunch in the freezer. I've had animals here where I get the meat. I can get them back anytime I need them. You know what I mean? But
Beautiful.
we just got to think outside the box about how do we want to live, and how does this affect bringing this system we've been describing down? Because I really think in the end, this is the number one thing people need to be doing. They need to be getting their life to where they're living right. We're not living right. We're not living the way natural man and woman were supposed to live. We're really not. This urbanization is for the birds. It's not natural. It just isolates people. You think somehow you move to a city and you're going to be more social and you're going to have, not really, man, because it's just kind of everyone's just doing their thing like zombies. And out here, I mean, when we go to town, we're happy to see people, I mean, it's just like, I feel real, social, but you don't have to be around them all the time either, which is nice because people are confused right now. And, you need a lot of introspective time right now, away from the screen, away from other people, looking at trees, talking to rocks, stuff like that, getting back in touch with the things that are real, that are solid. But there's ways to do this, man, on a personal level and on a bigger political level to take these guys out. But it's all connected. See, the spiritual, the political are all connected. Everything's connected. And it's all about liberating yourself and liberating humanity and liberating the planet. And there's no difference between any of that stuff. But maybe it starts with liberating yourself from the system and trying to get free and trying to get solvent and get out of debt. You have to get out of debt. You just have to. I don't know how sign those with student loan debt. For some people, it's just, God, it's evil. It's evil what they did to these kids. But somehow you got to get out of this debt, or you got to get it wiped clean, or you got to get something, because that debt is what really keeps people with the ball and chain and it makes them self-censor themselves. That's the worst part about it. They self-censor, and God doesn't want that. God wants you to speak freely, be a free spirit, tell what say what you say what you really think. Because that's part of the problem is, like, again, people don't say what they really think anymore. They're not as frank as, our grandparents' generation. They called a spade back then. They
Yeah.
didn't, go around in circles about it. And now it's like this is like the Queen's English. When people talk with this kind of politically correct, you realize that's kind of the Queen's English. And that's how they fooled the Indians into signing all these phony contracts and stuff. They used the Queen's English, this kind of roundabout, lengthy, long, sort of circuitous language to confuse the Indians. I don't like the Queen's English at all. I like being direct, and this is so even in your dealings with people, you just be more direct. Just be
Yeah.
more direct. If you have a problem with somebody, tell them about it. Don't let it sit there and fester. This all just feeds the dark energy. Whereas if you just boom, here, quit doing that. Okay, then we can just get that out, and then we can go back to positive vibe. And get on with it.
Beautiful. One of the
But
reasons I really like you, Dean, is that especially in a truther community that tends to, for whatever reason, tends to be more from the right side of the political affiliation. You're actually someone who really sees the potential of a collective model. You always say, the thing that they fear most is a true, an uprising of the left. And what I mean by left, forget left, right. How about just like people who believe in a collective model that can actually work, that we can work together collectively. But one thing I really like about you is you also really see the beauty and the power of what the right brings, is that the power of self-autonomy, and that's something super beautiful. Ironically, about both political sides, they're both right. And if we can mix them both in a perfect way, I think we really can have a greater world. And, when you have a self-autonomous human being who knows how to take care of his needs from the most basic there is, that doesn't mean I can't depend on Dean to grow some apples and I'll trade him my oranges for it. That's okay. I mean, that's the collective model, like there's not enough time in the day to do everything. But if you have the ability to be a self-autonomous person, you're way harder to enslave and way harder to control. And I think that's the paradigm that the modern world has caught ourselves in, and that's why you see this, this emasculating of men, and these men we have a whole population of young men who don't know how to do anything, and they're victims of their circumstance, okay? And I'm not going to blame them and say, oh, these damn young people are a bunch of dumb idiots. I mean, well, they're dumb idiots for a reason. And I believe that the light that they bring and there's a part of them that's not buying into this system. And when we can get to that place where we start teaching them, again, these life skills, I think we have a really beautiful future. And the potential of humans, we talk about the natural world. Nature is actually the potential of the natural world with human beings working together is actually greater than without human beings. I mean, yes, we've lived like parasites on this planet, and we've lived in a destructive way. But like you were talking about, this idea of free will, we can act that way, but we also can act completely symbiotically. Like, I have a tree outside with human beings. We could technically germinate every seed that comes off of that tree. Without us, maybe 1 in 1,000 will ever germinate based on a bird picking it up and pooping it out, and hopefully it lands in the right spot. Hell, human beings, we can literally green this planet better with humans than without us. So we have this really incredible potential to create this self-autonomy and this, controlling our food system, controlling the water that comes into our homes, the controlling, the shelter we put over our roofs, making sure as a collective community also that, hey man, if my neighbor is suffering too much, that could eventually come to my doorstep. So it's probably to my advantage to actually get involved in a community effort. It's like we see this just hatred for all immigration, and that so many on the right see this conspiracy going on, yet focus on this, the immigrants are the problem. It's like, come on, dude, don't you know why immigration's even happening? It's all tied into the same conspiracy that you buy into. You see, I don't want to say buy into. It's a truth. But it's all connected. I mean, the only reason these people are leaving is because they are victims of this as well. And maybe eventually we really need to look at, hey man, why is people leaving Mexico? Let's help Mexico. So then, these people don't want to be here. Then great, and I just see like a future world that could, the problems are so solvable. We have all the answers. I really believe, the work that you've done is helping us really see the elephant in the room. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to blame it on some small group of bankers that they could withhold this power, but maybe it's really true. And with the same regard, the power that we hold to wipe this force off the planet is it's so there. So let's get there, man. And however it happens, I believe. I don't know. There's just some weird faith inside of me, despite how you look at all the cards stacked against us. I just have something inside of myself. It's the reason why I even do this YouTube channel. It's the reason why I even search out people like you, Dean, is because I just really believe we're going to win. Ultimately, I do believe that we're going to bring heaven on earth because it's possible. We know it. We know it's possible, and we can do it. And I think that the events that come to us now, this World War III or the collapse of the economy or whatever, all this scary shit that everyone's freaking out about and thinking that it's all going to go to the NWO robot world and the AIs are going to take over and blah, blah, blah. We don't have to do that. And we can do another thing, so let's do it. And thank you, Dean, for coming on. We have to do this again sometime, man. We could do this for literally 6 hours, man. You're just an endless well, bro. I really, really appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks for having me, and you just take care, Clint. Let's make that thing you just talked about happen, man.
Absolutely. Can you just share your website before you go so people can find your work, where they can find your books? I know they're on Amazon. I know you don't want to be on Amazon, but it just is what it is for the time being. But where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, sure. The website, if you Google my name, Dean Henderson, you'll see it pretty quick. There's some English soccer player, and then there's me. But hendersonlefthook.wordpress.com. And you can subscribe to that. I just wrote a column this morning. You can get that when I write a column once a week. You can get that in your inbox or your email. If you just subscribe, it's free. And then my books are there at my site, and they're also on Amazon. Again, just type in my name, Dean Henderson, on Amazon. And Amazon sucks, but I self-publish because no publishers are going to touch these books that I write. So that's what I got to do for now. But hey, really, really appreciate you having me, Clint.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope you have a great winter out there in Arizona, man. And
absolutely, thank you, man. You're one of those guys that shows what a free man really looks like, and I have the same goals for my own life. My wife and I are like on our path of out of debt and get land and become autonomous human beings as much as we possibly can. Help rehabilitate the environment around us. That's what we want to do. That's what the school that I can't wait for even our future children to experience. And so thank you, brother. We'll do it again.
All right. Right on, Clint. Take care, man. Thanks so much. Good night.